Welcome to the Future Focused Learning Podcast, where we explore innovative ways to prepare students for the rapidly changing world of tomorrow. Join us as we chat with educators, industry experts, and thought leaders who are paving the way in STEM education and beyond. Let's dive in and discover how we can equip the next generation with the skills and knowledge they need to succeed. So, on today's episode of the podcast, we have Brandon, who is the Program Development Coordinator at the City of Dallas. And I was just super excited to have Brandon on the podcast because WizKid Learning has actually worked with the City of Dallas several times. We've run STEM and coding programming for their teens at their centers. So, I was really happy to have him on to talk a little bit more about that, as well as his role as operations manager at the Freelux Project, which is an incredible organization. I'll let Brandon tell you more about it in the episode, but it was just really awesome to have Brandon come on and hear him talk through his thought process and creation process when it comes to creating engaging programming for teens. And I think you guys will really enjoy this episode. So thank you so much for watching and listening, and let's hop right into the episode. Well, Brandon, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me.
So we first met each other in person last year when I visited the city of Dallas. For the listeners, WizKid Learning did some coding and STEM programming with the city of Dallas. And I met you and some of your colleagues when I actually went and visited the rec center. And one of the interesting things about you, or I would rather say the cool things about you, is you do a lot of amazing work with the youth when it comes to the city of Dallas, but then you also have roles outside of the city of Dallas in which you still are continuing that impact that you have. So, could you tell us a little bit more about what you do with the city of Dallas as well as what you do outside the city of Dallas when it comes to youth impact?
Absolutely. For the city of Dallas, I work for a special division called TOPS. And TOPS stands for Teams Organized and Prepared for Success. And so that division is housed under Dallas Parks and Recreation Department. And so what we do is create programming and initiatives to spread across Dallas area. We create safe spaces, special events, different activities to interact with our teams to address barriers that they may be facing, as well as families may be facing, as well as to provide aid to our recreation centers to increase programs within there. Outside of the city of Dallas, I work for an amazing organization called the Freelance Project. With the Freelance Project, we provide awareness, support, and stigma reduction education, which promotes healthy living and decrease health disparities around the city of Dallas as well.
That's incredible. And one of the things that I always like to ask our guests is when it comes to their career, when they're in youth development, was this always something that you wanted to go into? And also, did your childhood play a part in you actually going this pathway? Because I know for me, I've always been passionate about students and kids. However, I did not plan to go into a career that was so kid focused. It kind of just happened, and I'm so blessed and thankful that it did. But it wasn't like I grew up and said, okay, I wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to do this. It really just fell into place. And I was wondering for you, is there anything in your childhood that made you want to go into a career that focused so much on youth impact?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I grew up wanting to be a therapist. I saw some things growing up within my family dynamic where I was like, wow, we need some help. And growing up in that and going to school, my mom had her own youth organization. And so as a young kid growing up, as I had to work in that space. And so I really did not want to work in youth programming or youth advocacy, but it kind of just attached itself to me, even with me going to college and moving away. That's something has always been dear to my heart. Um, and so here I am now, and I'm at an age where I can still be relatable to youth and also understand uh, things that they may be lacking based off my upbringing and be able to create those safe spaces for them.
Yeah, I totally resonate with not thinking this was actually where you're going to go into. But I would actually argue that your childhood growing up, having your mom having kind of like, I guess, a community center, right? A youth
Mhm.
program,
Mhm.
and also wanting to be a therapist is quite like related to, what you probably do today. Uh,
Absolutely.
yeah, I would say it's kind of related. And the other thing that I would say is you brought up the point where you're still able to relate to students because of like where you are in your life. I think that's super important. Oftentimes, I think the biggest problem when it comes to creating engaging youth programs is that the person who comes up with the ideas is so far removed from the actual person. We even see this when it comes to even just not youth programming, but like public programming meant for a group of people that is run by somebody completely outside of that group or outside of that need cannot relate to it. So I always say, and we talk about like user-centric design when it comes to tech, but it has to be user-centric design when it comes to youth development as well too. Because if you can't relate to the students, you're not going to be able to create engaging programming for them.
I agree 100%. I think that is, I know that's one of your questions coming up.
Yeah.
But I think that is one of the biggest challenges, even working with and speaking with other organizations that focus on team programming, is that gap
Hmm.
between actually understanding and relating to the population.
Yeah.
Um, and creating an effective program and knowing
Hmm.
how to execute it and recruit in that space.
I absolutely agree. And I think more and more now, listening to those who are a little bit closer to the students is becoming more and more important. Like we're seeing it just throughout business, we're seeing it in politics with like meme culture becoming quite popular in like political situations. We're seeing it, we're seeing it across the board, right? And even us at like WizKid Learning, we very much listen to our interns sometimes when it comes to, okay, would you find this program fun? Do you find this interesting? Are you able to see the impact that taking this class would have? Because I still know that like I'm not a high school student right now. Like, I'm not Gen Z. So really listening to them to figure out what is important. And we can actually hop into that question that you brought up, creating engaging programs. So one of the cool things about the city of Dallas and like the programming that you have done is I see through just knowing you, and then also I see on LinkedIn that you guys do some pretty cool stuff. I thought it was really awesome that you guys, ventured into doing coding programming and STEM programming. I know recently you just did a talent show that was very, very successful, which I would love to hear a little bit more about that as well too. And I just wonder, what's your thought process when creating engaging programming for students?
I honestly just reflect on challenges I went through, as well as I take time to actually just sit with teens. Teens. And our population, our program for City of Dallas, our age gap is 13 to 17. And I think that's really, really important due to that's the age of transitioning out of middle school and then preparing to go into the workforce. And so I think that a lot of populations really do not get to really interact as well as communicate with that population to really understand their need. So sitting with them and understanding what they want is truly important. And so coming up with the talent show, I'm also a artist, but I also understood growing up, I had to compete with adults
Mhm.
if I wanted to be recognized as an artist. If I wanted to be to showcase my talent, I had to compete with someone that was older than me. And so I said, I really want to give these teams those opportunities to really showcase their talent. We had over close to 300 individuals show up for that event
Wow.
for days leading up to it. We only had sign six contestants sign up, but the day of the event, doing actually the dress rehearsal, like we got like so much influx of teens that was interested in it,
Of course.
and so which turned out to be 16 contestants
Oh,
performing.
that's amazing.
Right, and they was all amazing, and the winner was actually a duo, as a rap duo, and they was able to win a tablet. They was able to actually get a 2-hour marketing package from our Mac team from the city of Dallas, to shoot like either a video or recordings session with them, as well as they was able to do a radio tour with 97.9 The V, where they got to go up there and
Wow.
promote. And so it was really, really amazing. So I was truly, truly proud of that. But I think it's one, identifying the need that your community is asking for,
Hmm.
spending time with your teens to see if that program will be effective or not, understanding the demographics that you're working with, as well as the barriers. And so one of the main things was transportation. Every organization that I've spoken to with teen programming always asks, can you transport? And I was like, so my strategy behind that was to one, partner up with DART, our transportation
Mm.
system here in Dallas. And so I selected that location at Singing Hill Recreation Center, and I would love for you to come back and visit so you can see it. It's actually the only rec center that is literally a um, station for a DART train. So families can hop off the train and get resources at the rec center or
Oh,
utilize the
that's
rec center.
amazing.
And so I selected that rec center for that very reason, so that families, organizations could hop on, as well as they provided us some dark passes so that
Hmm.
organizations could transport their kids on there since we couldn't provide transportation.
I
And
love that
so
you mentioned like transportation being one of the biggest factors when it comes to, and I would assume it impacts just programming in general, because that's something that we've definitely noticed a lot of organizations, community centers have experienced. Like, are students able to get to these centers the same time every week for to do long-term programming? And it's something that a lot of us take for granted, having had either parents or live in a city where you're able to get to soccer practice every week. Like, that, right? But
mhm,
when everything is a little bit more spread out and you're solely relying on public transportation, especially if that public transportation is buses rather than, like you said, like a train or something like that,
mhm,
it's a lot harder to get there on a consistent basis. We worked with the organization, or still work with them. It's a Boys and Girls Club in Scarborough, and we run at home programming with them. We run in-person programming with them too, but Saturday morning programs, because one of the things that they realize is that, especially with students under the age of 12, they're at home on Saturdays. Everyone doesn't always have a car that they could drop them off to Saturday morning programming, and the parents typically work. So, even sometimes on the weekends. So dropping them off and have them having that Saturday morning activity is something that they're unfortunately not able to always take advantage of. And just being able to provide programming that is virtual sometimes helps alleviate that problem of transportation when there's not even thought into it. But it's really cool that you guys kind of broke down that barrier and said, okay, no matter if you could get your mom to drive you or you have to get some other transportation, we're going to help you get there.
absolutely. So I 100% agree with that in reference to the virtual aspect of things.
Hmm.
In this day and age, we're definitely transitioning to a virtual platforms.
Hmm.
One for easy access, as well as for this demographic that we're speaking with. Like you said, everyone doesn't have cars. They're 13 to 17, so they're still learning how to drive. If
Hmm.
not, just getting their car or working to afford their car, or their parents are transporting them.
Yeah.
And a lot of feedback that I have been receiving from parents as well as students, students may be interested in the program, but due to parents' availability as well as their resources they may have, they can't. So a virtual, I have, I love the virtual aspects of it. I think that's something that the city of Dallas, we are still looking to explore.
Hmm.
And hopefully that we can get to that virtual aspects, that our teams can still utilize that
Hmm.
space without always coming into the center.
Yeah. Going off the transportation piece, because, not everyone having a car, and I would argue, the world is becoming more expensive by the day. Like 20 years ago, even 10, 15 years ago, one parent could go to work and support a family of four and still send their kids to college, etc. That is not the case, and it's not going, and also own a home and have a mortgage. Like, that's not the case anymore. So even
Hmm.
something like a car payment, when you live in a city that has decent transportation, like public transportation, kind of
Hmm.
seems like a waste of money in the times that we're in, really. And it gets me thinking a lot about how the students must feel when they're thinking about their careers, because I know you start to think about your career when you were a teen and,
Mhm.
you know, they've gone through a lot. Like there's been a pandemic, there's like been a lot of unrest. And at an age where they're probably not able to fully conceptualize and understand what's going on, they just know that there's a lot of uncertainty out there, right? How do you find teens are like looking at the careers that they want to go into when it comes to what they study, maybe, or I don't know what they're thinking about aspiring to? What are you seeing? What are they interested in, or what's their thoughts about it?
So that's one of our pillars here at TOPS is leadership development and
Hmm.
career development. We have had numerous career opportunities and fairs where we actually do like career month development, leadership development workshops with our teams within the rec centers. And some of the feedback that I've been receiving and something that I also love about WizKid learning is that you guys have a virtual um, professional development course
Yeah.
that you guys offer. I think that a lot of teams are unsure of how to tackle that, or
Mhm.
they know that they need to, they want to make money. They know it's a need to make money, and some of our families are they're kind of forced to go out and get a job,
Hmm.
and so they get so quickly enticed with the quick money that they're
Yeah.
receiving at, possibly like a fast food restaurant or
Especially
in
as
a
a young
clothing
kid,
store.
being a
Absolutely.
server, those tips, it probably seems like, oh my gosh, this is a lot of money, right?
Absolutely. And so working with those in those workshops, really breaking down the salaries, understanding how long you may need in school, the education, what it would take, as well as even before going into the career, what classes you may need in high
Hmm.
school to take so that you can go get into the necessary program in the college so
Yeah.
that you can qualify for that career field. So we're working with the teams to understand that is really, really important. Some of the fields that we're seeing a lot lately is engineering.
Hmm.
Engineering was a huge one, as well as
Okay,
cybersecurity.
that's awesome.
Cybersecurity. Honestly, that was really, I had a team, quick story, I had a team that was interested in it and he was already doing some programming on it. And I was having trouble with my computer just one day. He was like, hey, da, da, da. He took like 5 seconds to update my computer. And
Mm,
this is the city of Dallas computer.
yeah.
And so and so understanding that, we have different softwares on it. But for him to be able to understand the software that was on there and to
Hmm.
adjust it, it was amazing. And so those are some amazing programs. And even speaking with him, talking about cybersecurity is definitely a field that is wrapping up,
Oh yeah,
um, and and becoming very lucrative. But also our teens are also wanting to be
I love that.
entrepreneurs, and so teaching them how to one market their branding on social media, the benefit of utilizing social media, as well as just professional development, interviewing skills, branding, 30-minute the elevator pitches,
Hmm.
um, you know, uh, just things like that, brochures and pamphlets, wording, um, presentation, is
Hmm.
key as well, and how you present yourself, are also, very important. So I think those are major components that we are in TOPS looking to really work with our teams with, but also in freelance as well. We have a leadership development and actually training ambassador training program that we just launched, where we found a need here in Dallas that a lot of individuals, as well as adults, want to progress in their education as well as development and career wise, but don't know how to move forward with that. So.
Yeah. I have a few points of what you brought up because you mentioned a lot of very interesting things. I love that your teens are having an interest in cybersecurity because that is, and I think is not talked about enough, such a growing field, especially because there's been so much advances in technology. And recently I was speaking with somebody who worked in the police department, and their role is to oversee like all of the cyber attacks for the sector of the government. And what they said is when it comes to cyber attacks, the criminals are using the best technology out there that comes out on the market. The government has to wait at least 18 months to test it, to go through it, etc., even to use it. And because of that, the jobs are increasing. They need more and more and more people because it takes more manpower, right? So that is a field that is growing. It is so high paying. WizKid actually recently started offering CompTIA cybersecurity certificates, which is like industry level certificates in accredited programs and things like basic cybersecurity courses all the way up to the very like extensive ones that, any cybersecurity job you're going to need to show that you have experience in it. And that's a really great way to do that. So I love that you guys have a focus on that. And I also would say getting them to think about what courses they need to take from a young age is so helpful. I think it's so great that, you're teaching them from a young age, maybe take this course or maybe look into this because at the end of the day, the career that we want to set the kids up for success. And what I love, which is it's kind of been brought on by hard times, is when because there's so much economic stability, having one job isn't always like you can't a lot of people can't just have one job, right? So it's great that you're building entrepreneurship in there, and because with these ha especially having high paying these skills, you could have a 9 to 5, but then also do
Mhm.
something that's more creative that could help bring in money, even if it just covers like your electricity bill or your car payment, etc. That helps tremendously. So I love, love, love that you spoke about that. And I want to talk a little bit about Freelux because I want you to I want you to tell us a little bit more about it. I absolutely love what you guys do there. So yeah, can you tell us a little bit more about Freelux?
Absolutely. So Freelance Project was birthed out of our CEO's newly diagnosis. And so we are a stigma reduction organization that focus on health disparities in Black and Brown communities. And so Nathaniel Hawley is our wonderful CEO. Shout out to Nathaniel. However, we create programs well, we send out test kits, self-home test kits out to all 50 states in the United States. And the home test kits are HIV rapid test kits. And with that, we completely free. They're completely free. And with that, we do peer navigation with that based off your results. And so we can get you linked into care in reference to HIV rapid services or PrEP services,
Mhm,
which would help you prevent you contracting HIV.
mhm,
And so the reason why I joined into Freelance Project with my background in youth is kind of a sad story. I working in social services, I was working with some teens that was taken from their family and understanding that, our youth are, engaging in activities.
mhm.
And we have to one educate them on how to one protect themselves and what does this mean. And so I wanted to create programs that teens feel comfortable to come approach us and have or build ambassadors or peer navigators that can go talk to them peer to peer so that they're understanding and they'll be educated of how to protect themselves when they do choose to
So
venture out.
your organization has peer navigators, and what that does that mean that there's like other teens that are educated by you that could help, educate their peers? Is that what it is?
Yes, so we work with all ages to create safe spaces. So that means that we're educating them on, sex 101,
Mhm,
healthy living 101, and how to actually have those conversations, those tough conversations,
mhm.
how to bridge it, bridge those conversations within your friend groups so that you could be a resource to your friends. Like, hey, I'm thinking about, venturing out and you can provide them resources of how to protect themselves or just be aware.
I love that. I love
So,
that. I think when it comes to those types of things, oftentimes there have been either policies or decisions that have been made to move away from even like educating youth about it. And the fact is that then it's like the blind leading the blind. And yes, now there's so much information out there that you could get online, but then there's so much wrong information out there. And not
Absolutely.
having like a place that you could go to where you're getting correct information, it creates a lot of problems that are actually preventable, right? So I love that you guys are doing that. And you guys have done like, some cool events as well too. Tell me a little bit more about the
Absolutely.
events that you've done.
So we have had our first, I believe that the first event that we partnered on,
Mhm.
Kid as well as Freelots, was the field day. And the field day was really designed, it was called the Kings and Queens Weekend. It was really designed to celebrate awareness as well as just bring education to Dallas natives. It was open to all ages. And so with that event, we was able to, I believe we had about 50 to 100 individuals that come out, and that was actually in 2023. Great. 2023. This year has just skated past me. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
2023, which we gave an educational piece, but we didn't want to keep it too much where it's just like a form. We wanted them to be able to come out and play kickball, foam machine, relay races, just an open space of welcomeness. And that was more catered to the LGBTQ community. And so, with that being said, we actually had a great time, and with that, we was able to really engage with the community and increase our peer navigation. Actually, we gained a couple of peer navigators that day, as well as ambassadors. And our ambassadors program is completely, totally different. Our ambassadors program, they go through a little bit more extensive training on branding on social media to be able to spread the awareness a little bit further. Outside of that, we have partnered with City of Dallas Parks and Rec, of course. I can maneuver both hats with a youth health day, which was catered at Nash Davis Recreation Center. With that event, we had over 11 individuals show up for that event, which is great turnout. We have barbers come out and donate their time and free haircuts, food donated, bounce houses, phone machine as course, and we just had an open health fair where other providers came out and provide information to the community. And so, even though it was catered towards the teens and youth, families, we cannot. And this is the most important thing that I will want to leave. You cannot reach the youth without addressing the barriers that the families are going through.
Mhm.
And so providing access to needs that the families are going through or need is the best way to attract families.
Absolutely. And one of the things I love about you is you take a really holistic view when thinking about programming. You're not just thinking about, okay, they need this skill. It's like, how are they actually going to get there? Like the transportation and like,
Mhm.
okay, how do we actually make sure what we're teaching them stays with them? And that's through engaging the family. It's really, and I was having this conversation with executive director of a Boys and Girls Club that oftentimes where youth programming fails is we're not looking at the child as in a holistic way. We're just trying to pinpoint like this one thing that we need to fix. But if you're thinking about, let's say thinking about doing after school program, or let's say this
Mhm.
talent show, you're thinking about doing this talent show and you're not thinking about how the kids are going to get to the talent show. If you didn't think about it, it probably wouldn't have been as successful because not because people weren't interested in a talent show and they didn't want to come and etc., because they couldn't get there. I love how you think about it holistically. One of the last questions I want to ask you is the main question that we try to answer at Future Focused Learning, which is preparing students for the future. What are the skills that you think, in your opinion, that students really need to know in order to succeed in the future? And probably it's probably going to be based on what you're seeing in youth because you're actually around them talking with them and have kind of firsthand knowledge of these are where they're excelling, but this is where I think they're falling short because of maybe the school system or etc. So what's that skill that you're like, okay, students really need to have this skill in order to be successful in the future?
That's such a tough question.
It is. And
Um,
I would
and
say
I
that there are many skills, obviously. But if you had to just pick one that not that's the most important even, but that you wanted to highlight now, what would that be?
I think the most important skill that I would say, just based off my observation with working with teams recently, like you said, it's many skills that I can name. Critical thinking skill.
Mhm.
I think that the internet, as well as just having access to devices,
Yeah.
takes away, those problem-solving skills or those reasonings to navigate at times. And so when those devices or those resources are taken away, you can really see the difference, especially with like test taking and homework and things like that. When you're taking away from the devices, those problem solving skills or critical thinking skills are also limited. And so
Mhm.
I think that's one of the biggest things that I will really hope that um, our youth hone in on.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think you could get an answer really quickly because of technology, but then there's
Mhm,
also a lot of wrong answers out there. Even with
mhm,
AI has like does this thing where it hallucinates, where it gives you an answer that looks really correct and
mhm,
it's wrong, right? And like, we also talk about like media literacy, being able to understand, what is actually a real headline, what is satirical, what is incorrect. It comes with this like information age, right? Anyone can learn anything, anyone can
mhm,
find out any type of information, but you still
mhm.
have to be critical and think and have problem solving skills to actually look at things and be like, okay, is this correct? Because I can
Absolutely.
I can write an article saying that there's mermaids spotted in, New York. And that doesn't mean it's correct, right? Anyone could write anything online. And so yeah, I definitely agree with that, like those critical thinking, the problem solving skills, because that also trickles down into every single area of life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it kind of also goes into like effective communication,
Hmm.
and how you communicate your thoughts.
The last question that I have for you is regarding the future of youth development, right? So the world is moving super fast. As we talked about critical thinking, those communication skills, there are so many things that students need that can't always be effectively fostered in totality just by going to school, right? So I think things like community centers and organizations play such a big role into developing the students into what they need to be able to be successful in the future. What are you thinking is like the future of like effective community programming? What is your, suggestions when it comes to how we can continue to innovate and meet the needs of young people?
Mm, great question. How we could continue to meet the needs of our youth is identifying that
Hmm.
access is the answer to all. Understanding that, like we stated previously, that technologies continue to grow and to really to pull in the demographic that you're looking for, as well as actually to provide the service, is you have to address access, hands down. Come up with unique ways to address it, come up with unique ways to provide it, but you have to address the access so that we could continue to pour into our youth. Our youth has to be our main objective, as well as they have to be able to see it, as well as be able to uh, before I even go into that one, being able to actually see it
Hmm.
is the most important thing, which is a part of access. And so if they're not at your centers, if they're not in your program, if they're not at if they're homeschool, or they're, only coming for a period of time in school, they might not be always be able to see it. So creating different access for teens can always know what resources are available for
Hmm.
them. So, I,
Absolutely.
so yes.
Yeah, I completely agree. Access is everything. I think we could build the programming, but if there's no way for them to get to it or know about it, that's gonna make it hard and also not as effective. So I completely agree. Brandon,
So,
thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. I really loved learning a little bit more about what you do at City of Dallas and Freelux and all the incredible programming that you guys are doing.
But thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. I really appreciate you taking the time, and I really hope you enjoyed that episode with Brandon. It was great getting to share with you guys a little bit more about what WizKid Learning has done with the City of Dallas, as well as the amazing programming Brandon is doing at City of Dallas and Freelux. Please make sure to subscribe to the podcast, give it 5 stars, and I'm excited to have you guys listen to our upcoming guests, in which I know that you'll love, and hope you have a great rest of your day.